This week, President Xi Jinping said that for mutual growth, China and America should come out of the Thucydides Trap. So what is this trap? You're watching Gravitas Plus, I'm Shreya Upadhyaya. To understand this, we have to travel not to Washington or to Beijing, but to ancient Greece. 2,500 years ago, a historian named Thucydides wrote about a war that destroyed the Greek world, the Athens-Sparta War. On one side was Athens, rising, dynamic, wealthy, confident, a naval superpower convinced that history was moving in its direction. On the other side was Sparta, an established power, militarized, disciplined, but suspicious, watching a rival grow too quickly. And then came this sentence, which echoes across centuries. It was the rise of Athens and the fear that this instilled in Sparta that made war inevitable. This line, written about the Peloponnesian War, has become one of the defining ideas of modern geopolitics. Today, it is called by the name of the Thucydides Trap. The modern version of this theory was revived by Harvard scholar Graham Allison. In his influential book, Destined for War, Can America and China Escape Thucydides' Trap?, Allison asks a question that has haunted diplomats, generals, and presidents for the last decade. What happens when a rising power threatens to displace an already established one? His answer was unsettling. He studied 16 major power transitions in history. 12 ended in war. Not because war was planned, not because leaders were irrational, but because fear changes behavior. A rising power becomes more assertive. A dominant power becomes more defensive. Athens and Sparta, Britain and Germany, and now we've got America and China. But here's where the story becomes truly fascinating. For more than a decade, across 3 American presidencies, Xi Jinping has returned to the same warning again and again. The greatest danger between China and the United States is falling into the Thucydides trap. And what's remarkable is he has been repeatedly saying this to different American presidents: Barack Obama, Donald Trump in 2017, Joe Biden, and now to Trump once again. Different administrations, different styles, but Xi's core message has barely changed. Let's go back to 2013. China was rising rapidly, but still spoke the language of partnership. America was emerging from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Barack Obama invited Xi to a summit at Sunnylands in California. The atmosphere was informal. Xi arrived with a phrase that would define his foreign policy, and that was a new type of great power relations. Now, China believes the United States may not know how to live with a peer competitor. That is the emotional core of the Thucydides trap. Not simply aggression, not ideology, but fear. The fear of losing dominance. Then in 2015, Xi Jinping stood in Washington and addressed the idea directly. He said that there is no such thing as the so-called Thucydides trap. But then he added something crucial to it. He said, if major countries repeatedly make strategic mistakes, they can create such a trap for themselves. That line matters because Xi was not saying that conflict is impossible. He was saying conflict becomes real when nations begin interpreting everything through suspicion. Then came Donald Trump, and suddenly the relationship changed completely. Tariffs, trade wars, Huawei sanctions, semiconductor restrictions, accusations of spying, TikTok. Washington stopped talking about integrating China into the global system. Instead, America began talking openly about strategic rivalry. What Sparta feared Athens might become, America feared China was already becoming. And yet, through all of this, Xi's language stayed surprisingly steady. He kept repeating the same themes: no Cold War, no containment mentality. You see, Barack Obama's America was cooperative. Trump's America was confrontational. Biden's America became alliance-driven and strategic. But Xi's framing remained almost identical across all of these 3 eras. That itself tells us something very important. that Beijing sees this rivalry not as temporary politics, but as a structural transformation of the world order. Next came the Biden years, and the rivalry became even more sophisticated. There was artificial intelligence, quantum computing, rare earths, supply chains. The United States strengthened alliances through the Quad, AUKUS, and NATO alliances. Meanwhile, China accelerated military modernization, and at the center of it all sat one island, Taiwan. Now, in ancient Greece, smaller disputes pulled entire alliances into wars, and that is why strategists today speak about Taiwan with such urgency. Not because conflict is inevitable, but because history shows how quickly great powers can become trapped by momentum. Both Washington and Beijing claim that they want stability. Both say they do not seek war. Yet, that is exactly how many great power rivalries begin. Not with a declaration, but with mutual distrust accumulating year after year. One side builds ships for defense, the other sees preparation for aggression. One side strengthens alliances for stability, while the other sees encirclement. This is the psychological architecture of the Thucydides Trap. But there's another layer to this story, one that is often missed in the West. Chinese leaders do not usually frame the trap as China being too aggressive. Because in Beijing's version, China is not Sparta, China is Athens. The world finds itself in a strange moment today. Two nuclear superpowers, economically intertwined, militarily suspicious, and technologically competitive. And they're both hanging over the relationship and with a warning of a Greek historian writing 24 centuries ago. The Thucydides Trap is not really about China or America. It is about what fear does to great powers, how rising ambition collides with established dominance, and how insecurity transforms competition into hostility. Which brings us to the final question. Can America and China escape this trap? Well, history offers no guarantee, but perhaps the fact that both sides openly discuss the danger means that they understand what is at stake.